Hi, my name is Katarina Hoskins. I'm a community sex educator, but during the day, I'm an elementary school teacher. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about books and how we can use them to match curiosity with curiosity and to kind of help expand conversations that might seem tricky and make them actually a lot more simple and approachable than you might think. Later, if you keep following me later this summer, I'm going to be uploading some lessons that I've put together, and this may include certain read-alouds. But today I'm just gonna briefly discuss a book that I read to my students and talk about some of the conversations that came up as a result. Today's book is Julianne is a Mermaid by Jessica Love. This book is really cool because it talks a lot about a little boy named Julian and self-expression and kind of where the people he sees in the city and admires and kind of where that leads him and on his journey to self-discovery. But it's also kind of a great book because it has beautiful illustrations but very few words. So it leaves you an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, to let your students or your children tell you how they feel. And I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about that. The great thing about literature of any kind is that it's expansive and it creates opportunity for curiosity and for conversations that you may be working really hard to figure out how to have with your child, but they're just going to come up more naturally, and some of the things that come up may surprise you. You may not actually get to some of the topics that you expect when you're reading a book, and I think that that's okay, and it's really important to let your child kind of guide the conversation, and that way you can learn more about how they see the world and where they're at and what they want to know, how they think about things. It is really important as a parent, as an educator, as a community member, as an adult in someone's life, especially an adult that they may admire, to not teach children what to think, but how to think for themselves. I know we may believe that our thoughts and our thought processes are correct, but it's really important to let them develop some of their own beliefs and integrity systems and ideas. So when I read a book, I ask a lot of questions. I allow for more student discussion because I don't want to force my beliefs on anybody else. I want to approach with genuine curiosity, but I'm also here and ready to answer questions honestly if they come my way. And that's going to offer your child an opportunity to just really start thinking about the world differently and form their own values, systems, and opinions. So here we go. To give a quick overview and idea of what this book is about, it's about a little boy who lives with his grandmother in the city, and his name is Julian. While on the subway, he notices what he calls mermaids. Now, as far as we know throughout the entire duration of this book, these are just mermaids, and that is really what the children see and how they perceive it. If they want to glean more out of it, maybe they can, but that would require some prior knowledge that they may or may not have. We can, as an adult, as we read through, we can see that the mermaids likely represent drag queens, but that's never explicitly stated in the book, and it's really just about a book about expression, self-expression and admiration, and just takes these characters of the mermaids and shows them as these glamorous, beautiful, expressive, kind of ethereal creatures. At one point, while his grandmother is taking a shower, Julian ends up playing dress up, and he wants to make himself look like a mermaid. When his grandmother comes out, he's nervous and afraid and begins to feel some shame. He worries that she'll be upset. Now, partially why he's worried is because he uses her curtain to make his outfit, but another reason might be because he worries that maybe it's not okay for him to want to be a mermaid. These are all things we can gather from the book, but it's a book of very few words, so that's not really stated. And so these are great opportunities when you're reading to a child to ask, how do you think Julian is feeling right now? Why do you think he might be feeling that way? My students said things like, he's nervous, he's worried, he's scared. And for the most part, they thought it was because he took down her curtain, not really because of what he was wearing. He's worried his grandma's gonna be mad at him. But the beautiful part of this story is that rather than be angry, she comes back and gives him a necklace to add to his costume. She then takes him to go see the other mermaids and to join them in a parade. And he is just amazed and excited. And there's a silly, a kid dressed up as a lobster. It's just a beautiful, fun conglomeration of sea creatures, and they join them. She acknowledges they're mermaids like you. And it's a really beautiful, happy, joyous ending, right? At the end, it shows Julian with the mermaids. His grandmother's there too. It's just a bunch of people as mermaids, and Julian gets to be one as well. So every book you read is an amazing opportunity to stop and ask questions and just lead with open-ended curiosity and see where the students take you. So I asked if anybody could tell me things that they noticed about the mermaids. And the first thing one of my students, a kindergartner, said was that she noticed that they were all different types of bodies. And she said, oh, they're all really different. They have bright colors. They mentioned the patterns, the colors, the bodies. And these students were approaching this without judgment because they're young and they haven't been taught to judge different body types. And in fact, getting to see these different body types and ages and colors and representations is something that could be really empowering and a positive thing for young students to see. You're also, of course, going to get questions. For example, one of my students asked, why does Julian look like a girl? And that gives an opportunity to meet curiosity with curiosity. My question in return was, oh, well, what about Julian looks like a girl? And her first response was the long hair. That led us to a conversation in which I asked, oh, well, can boys have long hair? And the students said yes. And I asked, can girls have long hair? Or short hair, I mean? And they said yes. And I said, do we know anybody who is a boy or girl who has hair that's short or long? And they all replied, we had several students who shared and were excited to share that they did. And, that led me to the question of, what if Julian wants to look like a girl? Does that really matter? And to them, it didn't. And I said, okay, well, great. What do you think Julian loves about being a mermaid? And we were able to just get into talking about that. And it wasn't anything that, we might imagine explicit or difficult conversations, but that's not really the case. Children are just curious. And the things that Julian loves about being a mermaid in this particular case are things that they would love about being a mermaid. For example, getting to swim and breathe underwater, having long flowy hair, feeling pretty. And that's spoken without any judgment. It is okay to want to feel pretty, no matter your gender or sexual orientation, your gender orientation. It's really, it's okay for anybody to want to feel pretty. And so that's ultimately the discussion we had that I felt would be important to share further. Really what they were focused on was how fun it looked and that Julian's grandma was supportive of him and that he was happy. And that's really what the students took away from this more than anything else. Thank you for listening to my video. I hope you found it educational and informative and helpful. For more educational content, please visit @ReclaimingSexEd on Instagram.